Elliot here again, and in today's video what we're going to be doing is cleaning this Nintendo Gamecube. This one's actually not in too bad condition, it's just quite dusty, it's got a few stains and scuffs on it, but that'll all come off relatively easily. So the first thing we're going to be doing is taking off this top piece here. Make sure there's not a game in the disc slot, and then what we're going to do is take off these 4 screws at the bottom of the housing, and to do that you're going to need your game bit screwdriver. So it's very simple, just undo those 4. So once those 4 screws are out, you'll be able to just lift the top off like that. I also took off the little pieces at the bottom. So you can just set this aside for now, you're not going to need it for a little while. We're going to be stripping that down a little bit more later and then cleaning it all up. So this is what you'll have. It's very, very compact inside, but don't be alarmed, it's nothing too scary. So depending on how bad the condition of the GameCube is, it will depend on how much you're going to need to actually clean. So this one's not actually too bad at all, so there's going to be very minor of what we're actually going to do to it. So the first thing we're going to do is take off this controller port, which is basically just clipped on, as you saw me just take off there. It actually unclips from the main board just here, so just pull up on that gently and then it'll come off. So the next thing we're going to be doing is taking off this piece at the back here. So very simply just unclips just like the front piece. So if we flip it around to the side, we'll see we have a fan here. What we're actually going to do is just unclip it with these 4 little screws that are on here, and then we're going to give it a clean. So it just needs a Phillips head screwdriver. Okay, so once you've done that, the fan will pop out. But before we do that, we're just going to pull it off from the main board, which is just clipped on there. Okay, so clipping it off is a little bit of a hard thing to do, but it's just held in there by friction, so it should come off quite easily. So then you can just pull the fan out like that, and it's just routed underneath a piece of plastic. So just undo that, and then you have the fan. So you can set that aside. What we're going to do is take the motherboard out, which will expose the bottom piece. So that's just held on by many screws all the way around. So I'm just going to undo them now. Okay, so once you've done that, this will lift up. It's only held on by this connector into here, so just be very careful with this. This is your whole laser assembly. This shouldn't need dusting down, perhaps on the inside a little bit, but not too much more than that, and just be really careful with this. You basically don't need to touch this at all unless you're repairing the laser assembly, so just set that to the side. And then what we're going to see here is the heatsink and the main board. A lot of this is also the power supply unit as well. So to take this off, it's just 6 screws along here, so just undo them. Okay, so this is just held on by another port, actually it's that one just there, and clips into that. So just undo this one, and again set this aside. You don't at all need to touch this unless this is what you're working on, so just be very careful with that as well. So the last thing we're going to be doing here is taking off the power supply, which is held just underneath here. So what we're going to do is just undo these 2 screws here, and then the whole thing will lift up. Okay, so once those 2 screws are undone, you can just lift the RF shield off. That shouldn't be too dusty. Set that to the side as well. And then you're left with the other little pieces that are inside here. There's going to be the battery, the power supply, sorry. There's going to be these little shields which you can just pull off. Just be very careful with them and set them to the side. Don't lose them, obviously. And then you've also got these little holders here which have threads in them. That's just holding the motherboard and whatnot down. So just take them off, sorry, and be careful with them. And then the last thing I'm going to do is take off these 4 screws that are just located inside the power supply there. So there we go. Now you can just lift this whole piece out like that, and then you're left with the bottom of the board. This is the bottom of the case, sorry. It's just down here is basically where the main dust builds up. Okay, so if you want to clean everything absolutely thoroughly, you can take off all of the insides here. If you don't want to do all of that, it's a little bit of a hassle, and you can just dust it all down thoroughly. You can do that with microfiber cloth. So that's the way that I'm going to do it. It's going to be a bit of a hard time to scrub down the middle of them, but it's going to take a very long time for it to dry. And if it doesn't dry thoroughly, then you could risk damaging the components. Okay, so for the purpose of time, I'm basically just going to put everything back together. It's basically exactly the same, but just reverse. If you get lost, then just skip back to a previous part of the video, and then feel free to just kind of follow it along from there. The last thing I'm going to do before I completely put it back together is clean this fan that I showed you guys before. So in order to do that, what you do is you take your Q-tip and you basically just scrub down in the crevices, and it will take all the dirt out. Okay, and that's it, I'm done. So that basically took me about half an hour, 35 minutes, and now everything's pretty much spotless again. If you want to really thoroughly clean everything, then as I said before, you can stick it in the sink with just some soapy water, and scrub everything down again with the nylon brush. But as I also mentioned, you just want to be very careful when you do that. Make sure everything's thoroughly dried. Anyway, as you've seen in the background for the whole video, there's a PlayStation 1. That's going to be a bit of a spoiler for my next video. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.